The Plague Doctor's Garden by A.M. Blackmere. By moonlight, my garden never slept. I made the last of my rounds at the hour when dew began its slow ascent from the subsoil, and the herbs, my darling, aberrant herbs, stood at their fullest attention, every blade ringed with opaline droplets. I knelt among the beds and pressed my ungloved fingers into the loam, and the soil steamed faintly, as if it exhaled alongside me. The garden was a quilt of sickly green and spectral silver, stitched together by rootworks that ran deeper than any spade could trespass. Mugwort jostled with yarrow, its filigreed leaves curling just above the disturbed earth, while angelica thrust up its pale hollow stalks, shivering in the night wind. I watched the valerian, always the fastest to wake, sprawl like an exhausted cathedral across the loose mounds, its tiny flowers clustering toward any warmth, even the wan, contagious glow of the moon. Each plant belonged to a grave. None of them spoke of it, but I could read the legacy in the way their roots angled downward with slow, possessive hunger. I had become a student of their needs, cataloguing the slight, sour upturn in the air when rosemary encountered bone, the syrupy haze of lavender drawing up bloodwork from the clay. Some plants grew in orderly rectangles, obedient to my hand. Others went feral, seeding themselves in the cracks between headstones, their tenacity a small, defiant miracle. Nothing here died without consequence. The mask? My mask, hung from my neck, useless in open air. I wore it between rows sometimes, when the breeze carried a whiff of rot or the coughs from the village drifted up the slope. But more and more, I found its weight a hindrance, not a shield. The beak, stuffed with vinegar-soaked posies, had lost its power to ward off anything but witnesses to my face. Even in darkness, I worked by the old herbal order. The first bed, closest to the broken gate, belonged to the restless, those who died mid-sentence, mid-scream, or mid-fever, their muscles still remembering the dance of life. For these, I had planted belladonna and sweet flag in alternating rows, a binary code of stillness and serenity. Belladonna's black fruit, already glistening with morning's promise, drew the last spasms from the bodies below. Sweet flag, with its sword-like leaves, cut through the shuddering dreams that sometimes churn the graves. I had read, in some outlawed Venetian tract, that such pairings could convince even the most stubborn corpse to sleep. A little farther on, near the collapsed shed, I cultivated my small patch of feverfew and pennyroyal. These were for the ones who clung to their last illnesses like badges of stubbornness, intent on returning by way of their own contagion. Feverfew grew in jittery clusters, never quite upright, always seeming to vibrate at the edge of perception. Pennyroyal crept along the ground, its tiny purple lips pressed close to the dirt, as if whispering the secret of its poison only to those already beneath it. There was a time I believed the garden was a barricade, that every new seed pressed into the dirt was another rung in the ladder between the village and the next contagion. This was before I understood the garden as a wound, before I understood myself as suture, not surgeon. I remembered planting her. I remembered it by the pressure in my chest, the ring of salt at the edge of my mask that even now would not brush off, no matter how many times I washed it. I remembered the way the linen shroud sagged around her small, unresisting shoulders. How the fever had burned the bones slender as reeds. She had no grave marker. That would have been a cruelty to the neighbors, to the priests who demanded that every corpse be boxed, catalogued, and forgotten as quickly as possible. Instead, I marked her with a mound of old valerian, uprooted from the apothecary's waste pile, and coaxed back to life beneath the rain spout. I flattened the soil, tamped it with the heel of my palm, and told myself the lie that I would return in the morning, that I would know this mound from the dozens of others, that I would not lose her in the forest of new dead. I lied, because the alternative was to admit that every root in this garden grew from the body of someone I could not save. Some nights I could not bear to look at the valerian. Its leaves had grown too broad, the stalks too pale, like fingers, like ribs, like ghosts of a child who would never again laugh or shriek or spit seed husks at her cousin across the yard. But I always came back, even after the plagues burned themselves out, even after the villagers stopped calling for me, except to bury their dead. The valerian endured as the rest rotted away. It became the height by which I measured my failures. Tonight, the air was so clear I could taste every plant as if it were a tincture on my tongue. Fennel, anise, blue hyssop, all the old familiars, but also the wildings, the weeds and half-breeds that refused to obey my taxonomy. I let the mask dangle down my back and pressed the bridge of my nose until the bone ached, breathing in the resin-sweet tang of the garden's breath. The world beyond the fence was a confusion of howling and prayers. But here, only the plants attended me. Here, I was something like a mother again. I moved between the beds, tending to what I could, mourning what I could not. I knew this was not the garden the priests imagined. It was not a tangle of devil's work, but a citadel, every stalk and blossom a soldier against the chaos that wanted to claw its way back through flesh. Where I failed in medicine, perhaps I could succeed in mercy. Perhaps it was the only thing left